We've designed these monthly webinars focus on skills specifically in finding and retaining the right skills for your business, and that retention piece is so important. And in terms of addressing the skills gap, today's webinar is all about the impact of having the right data skills within your organisation. If you do have any questions as we go out the presentation, then please post them in the Q&A chat and we'll pick up at those at the end. What I'll do, my name is Paul Smith, I'm the Senior Business Development Manager for OES. I'll put my email in the chat. So if you do have questions after the event or want to reach out and get more information about what we're discussing today, please feel free to do so. So please take part in the poll. We'd really appreciate any feedback that you have after the event today. I'll now hand you over to Louise Ball, Commercial Director of BPP, who is today's speaker on the skills for manufacturers.
Thank you. So thanks for the introduction, Paul. I'm going to share some slides. So I'm going to go, just give me 2 seconds, and hopefully the technology will be working in my favour today. So I'm just assuming that everybody can see that at the moment. Yeah. Just bear with me. I need to just pull my slides onto. Of course, it hasn't worked, so hopefully this is going to work. So just to run through what I'm going to be covering as part of today's session. So first of all, the first thing that I'd like to cover with everybody is just a little bit of background about who BPP are, and also how we have partnered with the manufacturing sector, with the MTC, to basically work on addressing some of the critical skills shortages that are impacting the sector at the moment. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context in terms of how manufacturers, what the opportunity is for manufacturers to use their data. And I'm going to explore some of the trends that we're seeing. So in terms of priorities for employers, I'll be going through some of those. And then in addition, I've invited a guest with me today. So this is Ollie, and Ollie is somebody who works for an organisation called Playdale, and his employers gave him the opportunity to do some training in terms of data analytics. So he's going to talk about some of the projects that he's been working on internally, how he's worked across various different business functions, and talk a little bit about the impact. And then finally at the end, I'm just going to cover some of the work that we've been doing in partnership with the MTC. So we've created some modules that have been designed for the sector, so they've been contextualized for the manufacturing sector, and then an opportunity at the end for any Q&A. So without further ado, just starting with a little bit about BPP. So you may not have heard of BPP. I think whenever I speak to people specifically in manufacturing, a lot of manufacturers haven't heard of us, but if I speak to your FD or somebody in your legal teams, they've definitely heard of us because they will have studied with us, because we set up 45 years ago to originally put accountants through their professional qualifications, and then we have a big law school. So we've trained and qualified 2/3 of the country's accountants and solicitors. But we've massively diversified as an organisation, and technology is a strategic imperative for us. So I work for the School of Technology, and my role is I go out, I work with industry, I understand their requirements for skills, and then I help them, I feed that back into our school. So I work with the subject matter experts and our curriculum teams within the school, and enable them to design and deliver programmes that are really relevant. They're addressing the skills gaps that currently organisations are facing. So innovation drives change. The roles that people are doing, they will not exist. I think there's a stat out there that says 60% of the roles that we do today will not exist over the next 10 years. So what are we doing to support organisations to support that? So that's my role. And then I work with employers to help them identify which programmes are going to be most applicable for the challenges that they have internally. Final thing about BPP as well is that we are a university. So in 2007, we made history because we were the very first private education company to be given degree awarding powers, which means we're one of the very few employers providers in the sector that can take people from entry level all the way up to a level 7 masters, and we award our own degrees and master's degrees. So the Manufacturing Technology Centre, Paul, I don't know if you just want to give a quick overview of what you guys do.
Absolutely. So in terms of Manufacturing Technology Centre, we're part of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult Group. The centre in Anstey is the Additive Manufacturing Centre for the UK. So primarily we do a lot of research around additive and work within automation as well. And off the offshoot of that is MTC trains. We have training provision at our site in Coventry, obviously part of OES, and also a site in Liverpool as well, working with apprenticeships and also commercial training opportunities as well.
Thank you very much. And that wasn't even rehearsed. So, yeah, so I'm going to start by just asking the question of, let's start by asking the question, what is data? So in my mind, it is something that happened and when it happened. But when that data is digital, so it's 99.999% accurate. So data comes from a smart thing. And what I mean by that is sensors, IoT devices, automation systems, they're all generating data in real time on production processes in manufacturing. So there'll be equipment throughout the factory floor that is basically giving off metrics, it's throwing off data all the time. You can measure the performance, and also data on things like product quality. And in a factory, at any one point, there are tens and thousands of events that are happening. So we're creating lots and lots of data, but the majority of organisations that I speak to, they're not really doing anything with it and they don't really know where to start. So what we want to be able to do is use this data to be able to transform it into information, and that enables us to start to automate business processes, and we can solve specific business problems. So we get our data, we're able to transform it, do something with it. We look for trends, we look for outliers. So is there a problem? Is there a trend in terms of, something that's happening? Can we detect a problem before it's going to happen? So do we know that when a machine reaches a certain temperature or it's been running for a certain amount of time, it's likely that it's going to fail? Is there something that we can do to predict that from happening and address that before it happens, so that we're fully optimizing the performance of our equipment? And in manufacturing, the skill set of the future of an employee, of anybody who works in manufacturing, they're going to need to be able to leverage the technology. So a lot of organisations that I speak to, we know that there is a challenge with skill shortages. So within the last 10 years, there's been a massive decrease. I think it's something like 60% less people are coming out of education wanting to work in the sector. So, and at the same time, we know that there's a big demographic. We're going to lose 20% of the workforce between now and 2030. And I was speaking to one employer at an event I was at. He told me it's probably actually more like 40%. So employers are trying to do more now to attract people into the sector. But some organisations that I speak to will say, well, we can automate, but do those organisations have the skills? So the technology to run the factory of the future exists today, but one thing that's stopping and slowing down that adoption of technology is the fact that organisations don't have people with the skills. So in terms of the skills and jobs that were identified, so this has come from Make UK, but also it's in line with what comes from the World Economic Forum, is that within manufacturing, almost 60% of employers are saying that the skills, the jobs that they need today, so it's not even in the future, are skills for managing automation of processes, data science, data analytics. And then in addition to that, we also know that sustainability, digitalisation are also a key factor. And one of the challenges that the sector is definitely facing is that the world has changed post 2020. We know that people do want to have more flexibility. So I do think by adopting more technology, we're able to automate, which means that we can manage and monitor performance remotely. So it does provide this opportunity to attract more people to the workforce. So untapped tech adoption could boost our UK economy by 232 billion annually. And what we want to be able to do is encourage the adoption of 4.0 technologies. So this is, as I've mentioned, AI, Internet of Things technology. We want to be able to increase efficiency and reduce the dependency on labour within the workforce. But also with that, it starts at the top. We've got to foster this culture of continuous learning. So there's this real opportunity to upskill our frontline workers who understand the nature of our business, they understand the challenges, and give them an opportunity to be able to work with the technology. So I'm going to stop sharing in a second. I'm going to switch to just to ask Ollie a few questions, because Ollie works for an organisation who've done this very thing. They spotted that there was this kind of, untapped potential sitting within their workforce, that by investing in him to enable him to upskill and putting him through a program, they can basically adopt new technologies and change their processes in the way that they're working. So I'll stop sharing for a second. Ollie, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, no worries.
So Ollie, I mean, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your career. So you work for Playdale. How did you come to work for Playdale, and what role were you doing for them originally?
I started late 2018. I joined. I was struggling to find work because went to university as a civil engineer and then struggled to find work around that sector in my local area, and happened upon the ad for Playdale, and it was for designing bits of playground equipment, which I thought sounded pretty fun.
Yeah.
So I applied for that as a design engineer, and I worked here as a design engineer for 4 years up until last year.
Okay, so tell me what happened last year. What was the pivotal moment that they kind of spotted that you got this potential to go on and do bigger and better things for them? Tell us a little bit about that.
I'd noticed off the back of visits to our distribution centre that we were printing installation instructions for every single piece of equipment that went out. When you're exporting globally all over the world with hundreds of bits of play equipment every day, some with installation instructions of 50, 60 pages, it becomes a lot of paper, and you end up paying someone to stand by the printer, and you end up paying for the hundreds of reams of paper. So I, off my own back, decided to digitize that process. It's now, I just used a simple Excel sheet that draws data from our internal servers and populates that in Excel. When you give it your order number, that then runs through a thing that gives you a link to every installation instruction, and it saved us thousands. And I think then they decided, well, maybe if we've done that in one area, maybe we could do that in other areas. So they decided to hire me full time as someone looking into digitizing and automating processes that were previously very, very manual.
Wow, that's phenomenal, because I'm looking at it from the perspective of an installation engineer being on site and actually having to search through reams of paper.
Yeah,
it's not, that's going to be more difficult for them. So the fact that you've set up this process that not only solves a problem internally at Playdale where you don't have to print everything, and I suppose as well, there's likely to be errors if something's missed there, and then you get an installation engineer right on site. You're shipping this globally, aren't you?
Well, especially as well in the UK installation, because it rains so much, it's useless. A piece of
Paper's
paper.
no good. So basically, what happens now is you just put the order number in, and it gives you all the hyperlinks to the instructions.
Yeah.
So somebody on site's got a tablet.
Yeah, so instead of sending one sheet of paper, instead of sending hundreds of sheets of paper, we send one PDF. And then if they want to print them, they can do, but we encourage people to just use a tablet on site.
Of course, because that all feeds back to your sustainability agenda also, doesn't it? Which, the manufacturing sector in particular, we've got this challenge to move to net zero. So they actually promoted you on the back of that little project. And did you just pick that up in terms of, proactively? You could see that there was this challenge in the business, so you decided to just go forward. And
someone had mentioned it. I won't take all the credit, because someone had mentioned it beforehand, and then I saw how bad it was when I went down to visit, and decided something needed to be done off the back of that. Yeah.
Amazing. And then you got promoted.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I feel a bit feels a bit self-aggrandizing, but no, yes, I did.
No, you should be really proud of that. I mean, so digital development engineer is your role now. So how, in terms of, tell us a little bit about your day-to-day activities. What does that look like in terms of, you know, the types of things that you're doing now?
So similar projects, what I call similar projects to that one, the low-hanging fruit, where it maybe can be done in Excel or something like that. Maybe something that might take between 8 and 40 hours is taking current jobs that people find very, you know, manual. Maybe there's a lot of duplication of effort. Maybe there's a lot of manual data entry, and we just see what we can do. We either use, you know, some kind of basic Python script or maybe some basic Excel functionality to try and get people working on, you know, the funner and more engaging parts of their job. For instance, something else that I worked on was automating the creation of commercial invoicing for export customers. You have to create a commercial invoice every time you export something. That was all being done manually. It was all data that we kept about each product. So you need to give like the cost of each product in whatever currency of the country uses that it's going to. You need to give the weights for everything, etc. And that was all happening manually again. So it was just, you know, small things. We store all that information on our ERP system. It just needed someone with the know-how to pull that information out and automate that process. So there's stuff like that. There's also, I also now do a lot of work looking at our data and how we can use that data to advise decision making, because that's a huge thing now, isn't it? Beforehand, we were obviously using data to drive decision making, but I think it was quite messy. You know, we would pull it from here, maybe pull a bit from here, etc., and not really do it to our full potential. So now that's currently what I'm looking at, is making sure we get the most out of our data.
Yeah, so it's done in real time as well. So I'm assuming because you're not having to pull it from multiple sources, you've just automated the process, so it's there, it's visible, and then
yeah,
I'm also assuming as well that it's put into a format that then becomes readable for senior stakeholders in the organisation, so they can
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, and like when I came out to see you and when we chatted previously, we talked about that process of how you work with various different business functions, and you will do an assessment, won't you, in terms of what's the risk involved, what's the time saving, what's the cost saving.
I work with, you know, every aspect, every manager in the business, and what we decided to do was we needed a way to prioritize projects, because everyone has projects that they want to get through, because everyone wants their job automated so they can focus on the better things. So we came up with a list of maybe, I'm just trying to count them now, 20 odd factors that we would then score up in the end. Some factors would be weighted more heavily than others. So for instance, one factor might be, is this business critical? Is it absolutely necessary that we get this done? And if so, that gets weighted a lot more heavily than, is this going to make people's jobs funner? Which is unfortunate, but it's the way of the world, unfortunately. We then use that score to generate a priority list of which projects we should be working on. But we can also use that list to generate a cost saved per year for each project, which will obviously massively determine what we do.
So me and you worked out that so far with the projects that you've taken up.
Should I just stop you, because I think we actually, ironically, I think we made a mistake on our thing. But I think when I looked it up again about half an hour before this meeting, I still think that the estimated hours saved are about 1,500 hours per year on my spreadsheet. Then you multiply that by however much you value an employee's time at, which ends up being at about £50,000. And then if you take on top of that all of the defects saved, stuff like, you know, because obviously you're not just looking at automation, you're also looking at less mistakes, increased brand identity and stuff. And I get that value roughly at about another £50,000. So we're looking at roughly in excess of 100 grand saved per year. And
that's just through what, you know, one person in the business that they've seen some potential in, and you understand the challenges that are faced by the business as well, because you're already working there, and they've invested in you, given you an opportunity to learn to use the technology, and as a result of that, 1,500 man hours saved per year. So you can see that there's a massive benefit for organisations. And then at the same time, they are, I mentioned it at the start, which is the future workforce, people who work in manufacturing in the future will need to be multidisciplined engineers that can use the technology and can work with the data. So actually what they're doing is the future-proofing the business, and they are developing a future talent pool, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right.
So, and you've been given an opportunity to actually go out to San Diego, haven't you?
No, don't.
Oh,
Yes.
Don't be embarrassed.
Yes, yeah, I'm giving a talk at Autodesk University on how we have shifted to a more streamlined pipeline of our digital process in October, which I'm very, very nervous about. I was treating this talk as a bit of a test run for it.
No, you're doing great. So, but I think that's one of the things, which is, some organisations that will be saying, okay, well, we've not enough people, let's automate, let's leverage the technology. And it's not necessarily about cutting costs, but it enables a business to scale without increasing the headcount, because it's so difficult to find people and attract them to the business. So, I just think they've got this. Some organisations would pay for an external organisation to come in and consult with them, but they haven't worked in that business. They don't understand the context or the challenges, which I think is just really, really important, because you can invest in data skills or you can invest in professionals coming in, but you've got that advantage there of actually you've worked your way up in the business, and you know everybody as well, and you know what challenges they face. So I guess one of my questions is that we've got this challenge in terms of critical skill shortages. Technology is driving change, roles are changing, skills that are required to do those roles are changing. In your opinion, would you advise other employers out there to do as Playdale have done with you and give just basically leverage the opportunity to invest in skills for the future?
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. And Playdale obviously think it's been successful as well, because we're already putting people on the same course that I went on. So I think you run as the people are scared to do it because they run the risk of people being too skilled and then wanting to go elsewhere and stuff like that. But I think that what happens is you invest in the people and you really show that you believe in these people and you give them a chance to build on themselves. And it can only be a good thing. It's as long as you make sure that you maintain this level of commitment to the employee that you're upskilling, which Playdale have done with me. It seems to be a no-brainer for people to do this. Sorry, I went on a bit of a ramble there.
No, I agree with you. And I had a very similar conversation. So I was at an event, and there was somebody there from MBDA who said one of his challenges with this is you invest, you pay for people, you give them the time to do all of this training. What if they go on and leave and get a promotion? But there's a guy from Airbus, and he'd had 2 of his staff go on to a data science degree, and he said they're going to leave anyway if they're looking to leave. But actually,
Exactly.
you invest in them, it does increase loyalty. And at least like we do a data science degree program that's 2 years, so that you've got them there for 2 years, and they're happy
that's
during
another big thing as well. You've got them 2 years at least, and if they feel valued by the company enough that you've put them on a thing, then it does increase loyalty. It definitely did with me. Anyway.
Yeah. And I guess that's it. It's also you feel valued because you really feel like you are contributing to the strategy of a business. You're making a difference. That's what people want from job satisfaction nowadays, isn't it? That I go to work, I add value. I'm contributing to the strategy, and that's what keeps you motivated. So I think that's great. I guess because when I spoke to the guys at Playdale, they were saying they would like to roll this out potentially across their managers. So do you think that, because obviously you're an engineer, do you think that there is value in kind of that management level who are working with data? Do you think there's benefit in them doing upskilling and having the skills to be able to work with technologies themselves?
Yeah, I think that as a manager in the modern world, I don't think it's possible to manage without looking at the data to some degree. And I think that, it needs to be correct for the person. I don't think every manager needs to go and do a level 7 doctorate in, or whatever it is, in
AI,
data science.
yeah.
But some reasonable amount of data literacy is very important, in my opinion, even if it's just so that you can leave the people doing higher end skills to themselves while you maybe get on with something that you might have previously had to ask them to do for you, stop their flow of work, etc. So yeah, I definitely think it's very important.
No, I know it's about empowering them to be able to do that for themselves, and not necessarily, sometimes it's just, I mean, I've definitely come across this myself, which is we have a centralized data team and they can create a dashboard, but nobody can interpret what it's telling them or how it's arrived at that. So just having that level of literacy where they can actually understand this is what the data is telling me, I think there's a lot of value in that also.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Ollie. I really enjoyed that.
Anytime.
So I'm just going to go back to the slides. So hopefully this is going to work. So just bear with me because I cannot get, there we go. So in terms of data analytics, the manufacturing sector, we know that the sector itself is very, very data rich. There's this big opportunity for organisations to leverage the data. And it's about, how can we do that? So where do we start? Start small, I would say, just as Playdale have done. They spotted that they had this untapped potential within their organisation, somebody who was really, really interested in making the operations, making their processes more streamlined and more impactful. But I guess, the challenge that we're trying to solve here is we want to connect our machines, we want to collect our data, we want to be able to store it, analyze it, be able to visualize it so that we can actually, we're not just lost in data, we've actually got some information. From there, we're able to find patterns, trends, spot problems, and then from there we can report on that and then use that data to solve our problems. So one of the solutions is, because we've had this conversation, I speak to a lot of people in the sector, and definitely one of the things that we find is, we know that data is important, we know that we need to do something about it, we know that workforce of the future will need these skills to be able to work with data, but actually what does an engineer need to be able to do? You can go onto a Google search for a data course, there's thousands of them, and it can be anything from using Microsoft Excel to becoming an AI developer. But actually, the context is what's important. So what are the challenges that we're trying to solve in your specific business? One organisation I went out to had, again, another young engineer that had an aptitude for technology and was really, really hungry to learn. And they'd basically set up automated quality checks. So every single item that went off the production line, there was a photograph taken, and image recognition would basically be able to automate would be able to detect, was there a fault on that, with the labels in the right place, with the screws in the right place. And they said, previously, before they had that, 250 of them would be boxed off and nobody would realise there was a problem until it had got to China, because we're reliant on humans to do those manual checks. But you can free people up and basically set up an algorithm that will automatically do that for you. So what is really, really important is that employers and educators come together so that we get that context. So that's what we have done. We're working with a number of organisations now to upskill their existing workforce. So just as Ollie went through in the example there, he was given an opportunity to be able to upskill. They're rolling that out across other people who work within that business. I do think that more needs to be done on early careers. So as roles change, I've mentioned already, that we've seen this steady decline in people coming out of education, wanting to work in the sector. We also know that we have a diversity challenge within the manufacturing sector. So actually, by changing job roles, by making them more multidisciplined, using the technology, it will attract a younger, more diverse workforce. But also making sure that when we develop this content, so there's something like 800 apprenticeship standards out there, but are they actually contextualized for specific job roles, for specific businesses? So it's about making sure that it really meets the needs of the sector. So we've worked with the MTC. We took their subject matter expertise in terms of the context of manufacturing, and they go out there, they speak to businesses, and they've come back and collaborated with us at BPP within our data science school. So we develop and we deliver up to level 7 in applied data analytics. We've got an AI program that's going to be launched next year. But what we've done is we have collaborated with the MTC to basically contextualize that content. So it means that when we are teaching, all of the case studies data sets will be in the context of manufacturing. So it basically means that when we're upskilling people, they are learning how this impacts their business and resolve specific basic business challenges within the manufacturing sector. Just the final thing is the modules that we have developed here. You can see these along the bottom of my slide. These are standalone modules. So we are working on being able to offer this to organisations and employers within the sector, so that we understand that an apprenticeship programme, sometimes that can be 18 months, anything up to 2, or in some cases 3 years, depending on which programme you want to do. With a lot of organisations, they just need a little bit of knowledge, but they need it really, really quickly. So we're working on a pilot to be able to offer taster sessions so that employers within the sector can send along their colleagues and attend just small modules, so that they get a little bit of knowledge that then leads into potentially bigger programs for them. And then the modules will be available as standalone modules also, which means we can select 1 or 2, or we can take a range of them together to develop that skill set more holistically. So from the slide I'm sharing, you can see that these are the modules that are available currently, and we're working with employers currently who are doing a combination of both. So they're leveraging the apprenticeship levy to put people through a 2-year programme, but also, just standalone modules for whoever needs it within their business. I'm just struggling to get to the next slide. So, yeah. This is another programme that we've developed, this is just the data foundations for manufacturers. So what that basically means is, as Ollie described there, a lot of the initial work that he was doing was just automating the Excel reporting, Excel spreadsheet work. So this would be a really, really good leader into that. But what we would also do is layer over those manufacturing contextualized modules, so data analytics for decision makers, building and evaluating business experiments, business intelligence dashboards, predictive maintenance module, and then a demand and price forecasting. But there is an opportunity for you to swap out those modules and just do the modules that are going to be most applicable to your business. So yeah, I would welcome if anybody does want any more information on that, please do reach out. So that brings me to the end of my slides. We've still got some time, so I don't know if Paul, you want to jump in, or Caroline?
Yeah, happy to jump in now and pick up any questions from anybody. Okay, we've got one question. How do we access more information on the programs that you're talking about today, Louise?
Okay, so we've got some information that I can share out. and we've got a brochure that will take people through the modules. But what I would say is, if anybody would like a call and I can go through this with them in detail, the key thing is we're flexible, so we will work with you, understand, you know, what are the skills gaps that you need to address, what layer, what level. So is it entry level, is it Excel reporting, or is it, you know, all the way up to a level 7 data analytics, where we're getting into like AI, deep learning, and then identify which layer is going to be most applicable for you. And then I'll keep everybody posted in terms of pilots that we're looking to run for some of those shorter courses. Hopefully we'll be able to help you with them.
Fantastic. I think that's answered the majority of the question, to be fair. So, let's say I have put my email address in the chat. So if you do want more information, please feel free to reach out. Other than that, thank you very much for your time today. We will be hosting more webinars over the next few weeks. So please keep up to date, and we will send out an invitation to you shortly for our next webinar. So yes, thank you very much for your time today, and hopefully speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Yeah, big thank you to Ollie as well. Thank you, Ollie.
It was
Thanks, everyone.
extremely insightful. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.